Hello and welcome, star people. This is APM, your intrepid star guide, and this is the Outlaw Astrology Podcast. This is episode 163, and this is where we dismantle astrological dogma and build a practice rooted in critical thinking, lived experience, and radical honesty about how the cosmos actually works in our lives. So today's focus is on sextiles, the 60-degree aspect traditionally called harmonious, beneficial, and an easy opportunity. But what if sextiles aren't gifts at all? What if they're invitations that require our active participation, our conscious choice, and our willingness to bridge the gap? So, here's something you should know. In the last episode, we challenged trines as automatic blessings and exposed how ease can breed complacency. Today we go further. Sextiles aren't even easy, they're potential, but they're dormant until you decide to act. Now before this, a little housekeeping. This episode 163 in our Harmony Illusion arc. Next week we'll look at the real chart examples at where good aspects can lead to stagnation, entitlement, and fragility. Again, join us on social media for the current star, so Daily Stargazer, all that stuff. You can find us on social media. You can find us on Pinterest and YouTube. And we have a paid and free newsletter with an archive of over 500 episodes and 80 podcast episodes as well. So I do free and paid versions about 2 to 3 times per month. Free stuff does come out on the new and the full moon, and any other time that I decide it's a good idea to share for my subscribers there. And also, let me see, and if you could leave a review on Spotify and on Apple iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts so other people can find us with greater ease. And we'd appreciate it. Thank you very much if you share us around. If you see or hear an episode that you like, please feel free to share it, because it also helps other people find us as well. And with that said, you can subscribe also to the newsletter. I do deeper dives there. Did I just say that? I did. Okay, and so, moving on. If you've been waiting for your next Venus-Jupiter sextile to deliver love or money without lifting a finger, this episode will be an uncomfortable but good experience. Alrighty then. The sextile is an invitation. Okay, so here's why potential isn't the same as manifestation. Okay, so traditional interpretations go like this. Sextiles are harmonious, they're supportive, they're opportunities for growth. The planets and points are incompatible elements. Fire, air, earth, water, etc. You get it? And so they get along and they offer each other assistance. That sounds lovely, doesn't it? Sounds like quite a lovely tea party. I'd love to go. However, here's the partial truth. Yes, sextiles do indicate natural compatibility, a sense of I can work at this, but that's where most astrologers stop, leaving the reader passive and waiting. So, here's the complication. A sextile is an invitation in your postbox. It doesn't RSVP for you. It doesn't turn up at the party on your behalf. It doesn't do the work of connection. You have to open the envelope, read the card, and decide if you're going or not, and then actually go or not go. Okay? So, here's a contrast with the trines. See, trines are languages you already speak fluently. Sextiles are languages you could learn easily if you bothered to take the class, yet you still have to enroll, turn up, and do the coursework. And so here's an example. Moon in Cancer, sextile, Venus in Taurus. Yes, emotional nurturance and a sensual pleasure. They understand each other. Sounds lovely. Yet if you never cook the meal, never draw the bath, never reach out to the friend, the aspect does nothing. It is potential rotting in the fridge. And here's a key point. Sextiles are not guarantees. They are doorways. Doorways require that you walk through. And if the door is closed, it requires you to turn the knob and bloody open the door. Okay, so sextiles are not some beautiful, wonderful thing that you just, you just enjoy. You don't have to do anything. You actually have to shine that up if they're a bit tarnished. Otherwise, nothing happens. Okay, so here's another thing. There's a myth of favorable aspects. Who benefits from us having such passivity in our brains, in our hearts, etc.? So let's talk about the language here. Why do we call sextiles favorable or fortunate? Favorable to whom? What does it mean to label an aspect that requires your engagement as easy? So let me give you a little bit of a political reading, a bit of political context here. Traditional and also pop astrology emerged in contexts where wealth, opportunity and resources were inherited or granted by external authorities, i.e. kings, gods, fates, etc. So sextiles were favourable because if you were nobility, opportunities did come to you passively. If you were a peasant, meaning you were a sharecropper in Mississippi, for example, or if we're talking more traditionally back in Europe, if you were a serf, no aspect mattered. Okay? So it only mattered if, because astrology was done by people for people with money, by people with slightly less money, in exchange for status. Okay? And if you were a serf, it didn't matter how many sextiles you had in your chart. It didn't matter how many trines were there. If you don't have any opportunities and no access to the resources, it don't matter how many trines and how many sextiles you got. So, let me also update with some modern context. So we live in a different world now. Opportunity is not distributed fairly or even equally. Access is not equal, and calling a sextile favourable without acknowledging that fact that some people have to work 10 times harder to activate the same aspect is called astrological gaslighting. Now, here's an uncomfortable question we should all ask. Let me say that again because it sounded like I had marbles in my mouth. By the way, I should note I can't talk louder, so if I'm talking too softly for you, just turn up your speakers, turn up the volume, turn up, because I have all the voice. This is all the voice I can give for the day, and this podcast episode absolutely needs to go out on schedule. And so here's the uncomfortable question. Are we using harmonious aspect language to avoid talking about privilege, access, systemic barriers, and the actual labour required to turn potential into reality? Because sextiles are potentials, they're not realities, they are not facts. And so the question is, are we using this to spiritually bypass, to astrologically gaslight? And that's an answer that only each of us must ask ourselves, and only each of us can answer for ourselves. So, here's a reframe. Sextiles are not favours from the cosmos. They are slightly easier pathways that still require navigation, decision-making, action, and choice. The grade is less steep, yet you still have to climb the bloody mountain. And with all that entails, obviously. So, here's the thing. As empowering as this can be, it can also be discouraging, I get that. And my intention is to empower. So, this means that you are not at the mercy of planetary benevolence. You're not at the mercy of the cosmos. You're not at the mercy of your chart. You're not at the mercy of aspects. You are an active participant in your own chart. And that is how it really is. Star people. Now, I know you've heard differently. And the different that I usually hear is that, oh, you've got all these trines, your life is so supported, you're going to have support and resources. if you can't see me, but I'm wagging my finger, and I don't have my glasses on, but imagine me with my glasses perched at the end of my nose whilst I wag the finger at this particular thinking that ignores the fact that everybody's reality and access to resources is vastly different. We cannot ignore things because it's uncomfortable to face them. So, let's move on, shall we? So, sextiles, well, let's talk about them via element and what kind of invitation you might be receiving. And so, fire, air sextiles, that's Aries, Gemini, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius, Aquarius. This is an invitation to translate inspiration into communication. So the fire has the vision, the air has the articulation, yet you have to bridge the gap. So an example of this would be Mars in Aries sextile Mercury in Gemini. And this doesn't make you automatically eloquent about your desires. It means that if you practice speaking your truth, the words will come more easily than they would otherwise. Let me say it again. It doesn't mean that you open up your mouth and magic comes out. It means that if you take the time to practice and put in the bleeding effort, the words will come more easily than they would otherwise. That's what it means. Now, Earth-Water sextiles, that's Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, Pisces. This is an invitation to alchemize feeling into form. So, water knows the emotional truth. Earth knows how to build it into reality. Yet, you still have to do the slow work of embodiment. An example, Venus in Taurus, sextile Neptune in Pisces. Now, this offers the possibility of sacred sensuality. Sounds lovely. Also, felt sense and embodiment. Yet you can only get there if you create the ritual, set the boundary, make the art, bake the cake, write the poem, create the sculpture. You got it? You there with me? That's how it happens. It's not going to magically happen, and just because it exists doesn't mean that you automatically are going to know how to sculpt or write the song or the poetry. And so, let's talk about the direction of flow. So, fire and air sextiles ask, can you make the invisible visible? Earth and water sextiles ask, can you make the felt tangible? The sextile is bi-directional. Both planets offer something to the other, but only if you can facilitate the exchange. Let me say it again. Both planets offer something to the other, but only if you can facilitate that exchange. That means you're bridging a gap. And I'm not going to lie to you. Let me tell you that it's quite difficult, okay? Even compatible elements can struggle to meet. So, air can dismiss fire as or heat, no substance, and fire can find air too detached. Earth can find water to be far too all over the place, chaotic, and water can find earth to be too rigid. The sextile is an invitation to bridge these gaps. They are not proof that they're already bridged. So, let's talk about when sextiles go dormant and the cost of ignoring an invitation. Because I've said, sextiles are invitations, yes? So let's talk about the shadow here. What happens to a sextile that you never activate? Does it just sit there neutrally? Or does the unused potential become a source of regret, self-blame, or wasted talent narratives? You can definitely waste a lot of your life with the wasted talent, unlived potential type vibe that a sextile can have in your chart. And so, let's talk about stagnation. Now, here's the thing about sextiles. The sextile can become a could have been. You know that line for the film. Was it the one? I could have been a contender. Somebody, I can't remember the film that came from. If anybody remembers, do let me know. But I could have been this. I could have succeeded. As a story that I shared in the first podcast of a person who had everything. The best life. They had adoring nannies, lovely parents, came from a wealthy family, beautiful clothing. Everybody adored them. It was just amazing life. Childhood was idyllic. Teenage years were beatific. The young adult years were just more of the same. And yet, this person ended their life rather angry and bitter because they could have done something. They could have been a contender. They could have succeeded. They could have, woulda, shoulda. And I happen to know people in my very own family and friendship circles whose entire life is just everything about unlived potential. I could have done this, I could have did that, but this happened, if only this hadn't happened, this would have happened type of deal. So it is definitely a could have been aspect. And so Mercury sextile Jupiter, for example, is unfulfilled, might sound like this. I could have been a writer, teacher, philosopher, if only I'd tried. So it carries a low-grade shame sometimes rather than an active opportunity. And there's also a pressure implied here. There's a cruelty in being told you have natural talent or easy opportunities, because when structural barriers exist, when trauma exists, when neurodivergence, poverty, or simply a life circumstances that prevent you from accessing them, sextiles can become sites of internalized failure rather than genuine support, which leads to shame and guilt and all sorts of recriminations, which is not going to be mentally and emotionally and psychologically healthy in the long run, let alone in the short. Okay, so let's do a reframe. An unactivated sextile is not a moral failing. It is simply potential that wasn't prioritized. And that's fine. You don't owe your chart full expression of every bloody aspect. You're allowed to choose which ones you want to focus on. Ones that align with your values, align with your objectives, your intentions. You don't have to make everything in your chart express itself fully. As a matter of fact, you'd need a lot more life than any of us are ever going to live in order to make that happen. So choose wisely. You're allowed to do that. This is your chart. You're not obligated to shine up a Venus-Neptune sextile if you don't want. Also, I must acknowledge this as well, ignoring every invitation eventually leads to some sort of a bit of isolation, like some part of you is in exile. And if you never respond to any planetary dialogue, you end up alone in your chart. Sextiles are low-stakes ways that you can practice engagement without the intensity of a square or an opposition or a quincunx, or any of the harder aspects. Sextiles allow you to play around with the energy without it imploding or exploding your life. You can test it and go, okay, this Mercury Saturn sextile is, I need to set boundaries. I can't chase everything. I can't run after everything. Let me give you an example. Mercury in Sagittarius. Sextile Jupiter in Gemini. Now, we have a sextile right here. Did I say Jupiter? Let's change that to Saturn. So let's do Mercury in Sagittarius and Saturn in Gemini. Yeah, that's better. Okay, Saturn in Gemini wants you to be careful with your words. It wants you to mean what you say. It doesn't want you saying yes all the time, because if you're saying yes all the time, when are you going to have time to think, to question, to do all that Gemini stuff that you love to do? And if you're saying yes to every chance to chase after every rabbit down every internet rabbit hole, you'll have 100 tabs open on your computer in the browser, and you'll have learnt nothing, and all the information you get is scattered, and there will be no connection, no pattern whatsoever to any of the things that you have looked at, merely that what they have in common is that you're interested in them enough to look them up, but they don't seem to have a pattern that you can discern that it would be helpful in your life. And Saturn and Gemini is like, oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that at all. You are going to close some of these tabs, and we're going to pick the most relevant information to what's relevant to what we're trying to do here. If you're trying to write your dissertation for your PhD program, then you don't need all of these 50 tabs. You need less than half of them. So pick the relevant information so we can get focused on this, because it's due in 3 months, and you've only got half the way through. You're going to have to ask for your third extension. And quite frankly, we're not certain that the advisors are going to give you another one, because you've already spun it out. You see what happens? And then we've got Mercury in Sagittarius on the other end of that. And lived experience, optimism. So might believe I can do this in 90 days, because when this idea came up, you're like, oh yeah, you enjoyed yourself, you went and travelled, you had a wonderful time, you took all the classes, now it's time to write a dissertation and you can't get your bum in the chair. Everything seems boring. You'd rather be out there running around chasing an idea to get that lived experience and to live out your theories. But that dissertation, as I said, is due in 90 days, and you've written yourself halfway through. You are about to ask for your third extension, which may not be the best idea. Because you thought, I can write a dissertation in 90 days, which is not a wise choice to make. But when you've got Jupiter there, yeah, you make those type of things. But when you put Saturn in Gemini is like, oh no, 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 no. You are not about to make a fool of me. We are not going to do this again. We're going to put our bum in a chair, get rid of all this crap that you've been looking at. None of it is relevant to this dissertation at all. We're going to focus at this time, for this time to this time, on this particular day. We're going to get this thing banged out so that we can meet that deadline, because you are not going to ask for yet a third extension, having begged for 2 previously, and they barely gave you the second. So, having said all of that, that is the Mercury. I'm sorry. I did it again, didn't I? Not Gemini. Sorry, Aquarius. I meant to say Aquarius, because I just realized I gave you an opposition, which makes no bloody sense. So you see where my mental acuity is today. Let's try that again. None of the story, though. So Mercury and Sag wants to run out there after all the things. Saturn in Aquarius is the sextile, because Saturn in Gemini would be in opposition. My apologies. Saturn in Aquarius, I want all the big ideas. I want to be in the future. But Saturn wants to build a real structure. Okay, we have that deadline coming. No, we're not running all over the internet and all over the world looking for ideas. We have a dissertation due. It's due in 90. We're not asking for a third extension. We've already asked for 2. This is it. We're putting our bum in that chair, and it's happening. And it's going to happen on this day, and this day, between this time and this time. And it's going to feel uncomfortable. And we're going to do what we need to do to make ourselves comfortable so we can make this happen. And so that fire is being cooled by the impartiality of Aquarius, because Sagittarius is very enthusiastic, very excited, very optimistic. I can do it. Never climbed a mountain. Don't know nothing about climbing mountains, but looking at a mountain right now and decided I'm going to go up there and climb that. I'm not wearing the proper shoes. I don't have the proper clothing. I am wearing a set of trainers and a jogging gear, and I am not prepared to climb a mountain, because that altitude is going to get colder, and I need a jacket, I'm going to need food, I'm going to need proper shoes, I'm going to need those shoes to be done out properly so I don't get blisters. You understand what I'm saying here. Sagittarius is like, let me just go. And Saturn and Aquarius is like, hold on there a bit, mate. Stop. Mountains get cold. And at some point up there, it's going to get chilly and you don't have a jacket. And you've never run in your life. Except, running through Morocco or running with the bulls, if you count that as running, sure, you've done that. But that is not this type of thing. This requires endurance. We need to plan. And so, also, you shouldn't be contemplating mountains when you've other things to be doing. And so, that Saturn in Aquarius is very calming. It is very cooling energy. It's saying, don't lose that enthusiasm. We're going to need that to write this dissertation, to do what we need to do. However, we need to stand back from that enthusiasm just a little bit so we can actually get the job done. Now, a note. Saturn, in this example, Mercury is not in its strength, traditionally speaking, in Sagittarius. We're going to have a go at that in a future episode. Saturn in Aquarius is in the sign it traditionally rules, and that's supposed to be a far stronger placement. Also, we'll be having a go at this in a future episode. But you can see that the fire of Mercury, it's all overheated, it's all go, go, go. I want to do it. I want to get it done. I want to get in there. And the Saturn's like, oh, whoa there, whoa, that sounds wonderful, love it. We need a plan. We need to stay a little cool-headed. We don't want to burn out too quickly. We've got work to do. And that's how it gets done, okay? So, I acknowledge that this sextiles, like I said, I'm not going to make it sound like it's easy, okay? At no point is any of this ever easy. And if you found it to be difficult, join me, because I too feel the same way. I used to believe that charts were determined, and this was your fate, and this is what you had to work with, because that is what I was taught by my astro mentors, until I suddenly started questioning things, which is what I'm now doing. And now I come to this. It's like, okay, this is nice. I have this lovely aspect, but it hasn't gone so well for me. That was what the problem was. Sextiles are great. Love them. But it doesn't mean it makes life easy or fun. Because I have moon and sun in a sextile in my chart. And my moon is fussy, and it likes things just so. And it's up against the planet, the sun on the other side wants go, go, go. It wants adventure. It wants this. And the moon's like, wait, whoa, no. I don't want any of that. I just want to sit here. I want to have peace. I want to have nice people. I want it to be pretty. And you want to climb a mountain? That's not comfortable. That's not pretty. Those clothes are ugly. I don't want to do any of that. And the sun's like, well, I'm bored. You see that energy? But it doesn't necessarily get resolved. And so it's just two energies within yourself or within your life kind of pushing and pulling against each other or just sitting there. And in my case, it sat is basically what happened. The sun wanted to go and do things and have an adventure, and the moon's like, no, I'm safe here. It's pretty and it's nice, and these people are very sweet, even if they're not our people. But they're acting nice. That's good enough, right? And this is how a sextile can play you. And you can be misled into believing that it'll just naturally wake up when, say, the sun or the moon at another point wakes up that moon, or another point or planet wakes up that sun, that suddenly it's going to be like, oh my God, I can make my dreams come true now, okay? That is the tension that modern astrology is currently laboring under. And so, here's what I'd like to offer. The permission to make a choice. You don't have to activate every sextile. You just notice which ones keep knocking. Those are the invitations your soul actually wants to accept. So if I constantly notice that my moon in air is constantly pressing against my sun in fire, that keeps knocking, and by the way, it does, that means I'm meant to open the door and say, yeah, what do you want? But the choice is still my choice, just as it is yours. Alrighty, so let's talk about how we can practice sextiles, and that would be rituals and timing in conscious activation. So here's my first suggestion, ritual 1. You can map your natal sextiles, since you can list them, identify planets, houses, and elements involved, and then ask, for each one you can ask, have I accepted this invitation, and what would it look like to actively engage this connection? Ritual 2, you could track sextiles by a transit as well, and that is whatever's going on in the skies. Any software out there, AstroStyle will do it, AstroSeek will do it, AstroTheme and Astro.com. You can find calculators that will do the transits for the current skies. And so when you see a transiting planet making a sextile to your natal chart, you treat it like an actual invitation. So set a reminder, schedule time, create a small ritual or action that bridges the two planetary energies. And so an example would be this: transiting Venus sextile natal Mars. So plan a date, move your body with pleasure, do something that marries desire with action. Or a value. Maybe you decide, you know what, I want to make the world more beautiful, and you decide to join a movement that allows you to clean public parks or clean the ocean, for example. So as long as you follow up that value with action that supports it. Now, let's talk about timing. Sextiles are not urgent. See, that's why they don't often get activated, because like a square, squares are urgent. They keep poking you. Poke, 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 poke. It starts to feel uncomfortable. And finally, with a square, you're like, okay, fine, let's find a solution. Whereas a sextile is not like that. You know, oppositions require you to confront things. Squares require you to respond. Sextiles offer a very gentle nudge. You have time to consider. You have time to prepare, to choose. You have to use the aspect quality wisely. So this is not the opportunity to let I don't have time become I'll never do it, okay? Because that is the very real when it comes to timing events, okay? And so here's something I didn't do with the last episode, but I will do with this one. And so you can consider a sextile to be rather like a 2 of pentacles. For those of you who are into tarot, it's a juggling, it's a balancing, it's a choosing to allocate energy between two compatible but still distinct forces. So it's not a struggle like a square, not a confrontation like an opposition, not support like a trine, and it's not automatic. So it's an active equilibrium, meaning you have to make a conscious choice to get your bum in gear. And so here is a journaling prompt. Write a letter to one of your natal sextiles as if it were a person who invited you somewhere. So, why haven't you gone? What would it take for you to say yes? What are you afraid of? What do you hope for? Etc. And so these are ways of creating an invitation. Now here's the reason why I'm doing it. Because if you do it like this, it keeps your critical mind from trying to colonize your astrological experience, which is why I've posed the questions in the rituals as I have done. Okay? And so here's what I want to say next. Sextiles are not favors from the cosmos. They are invitations. And they require your constant participation. Your willingness to bridge compatible but still distinct energies. So your choice has to be to turn potential into lived reality. Passivity kills the sextile. Engagement brings it back to life. So here's a call to action for the week. Choose one sextile in your chart by transit or natal, and do one small tangible thing to activate it. So if it's Mercury-Venus, write something beautiful. If it's Mars-Jupiter, take a risk that excites you. If it's Moon Neptune, create a ritual that honors your emotional intuition and report back. Did the invitation feel easier to accept than you expected, or did it require still more courage? Okay, and so the next episode is episode 164, when good aspects go wrong. So we're going to do, a few examples where too many trines and sextiles can lead to stagnation, entitlement, and fragility, and a lack of resilience, because sometimes struggle is the only thing that builds strength. Okay, and so until next time, star people, stay curious, stay critical, stay engaged. Invitations are only as powerful as your willingness to respond to them. Peace, star people.